Oisin, thanks very much, Sharon. First of all, pleasure to be here. I see lots of familiar faces around the table as well. Now, unfortunately, this medium doesn't allow me to make a lot of eye contact, so I'm obviously looking at some very small pictures of everybody in the room, and I think we're somewhere in the region. I think we're expecting up to about 140, 150 people. But what I will be trying to do today is something a little bit different. I'm sure all of you have sat number of different courses over the last maybe 10 or 15 days or 3 months even. I think I've sat myself about 10 different webinars over the last 3 weeks, and it's amazing how many I suppose bits of information now that we're picking up from areas that we didn't actually put too much stock in before, but now we have the time actually to sit back and do a little bit of training, and we're thinking about what we can do to make our business a little bit better. And I've set some wonderful courses being run by the LEO and some on a private basis. And one of the things I have noticed though is that as I'm going along, I am starting to get a bit of Zoom fatigue. And I'm sure some of you are experiencing exactly the same thing. All of your meetings are either on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And while they're enjoyable, and I'm not taking away from the content in any way, I have noticed that over the past while, the more PowerPoints I'm seeing, the less I'm actually absorbing. So what I've decided to do today is something a little bit different. And for those of you that do know me, I know some of you, I recognize some faces there. You've been on some of my programs before, you've come along to see my seminars. Usually in seminars, I try and keep my slides to a minimum anyway, and I usually spend a couple of hours talking. When I'm teaching, and teaching is probably what I like doing most, when I'm teaching, I usually have a big whiteboard or a flip chart that I spend most of my time on. So today, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. So I've decided to change the technology a small bit. So I'm actually going to use a whiteboard for today's session. So I'm going to be transposing some images onto a whiteboard. I'm going to be drawing. I'm going to apologize in advance. Sometimes it's a little bit clunky, but there's a first time for everything. And I said, you know what, with this type of audience, with this type of content, I think it's a lot more engaging if we get a chance to actually, hear the message, see it sometimes being wrote up, give you time to actually reflect and think about it, see how it applies to you, and then maybe formulate some questions as well. And obviously I'm going to be leaving some time at the end of the program for you to ask questions, and as many questions as you can. They're all very welcome. We'll spend as much time as we can to get through them. And in that regard, during the session itself, I will be taking a pause as we move through different sections, and I'm going to be checking in with Sharon, and Sharon is going to do the MC today. So she's going to do the housekeeping and keep manners on me, and hopefully keep manners on everybody else. But when it comes to the questions, if I cover a topic or I cover an area that you're interested in and you want to find out a little bit more information on, what I'm going to get you to do is pop the question into Sharon's chat. So we'll just open up the chat function on the bottom of the screen. There's a little bubble down there that looks like a message. Open that up, pop your question into Sharon. And when I take one of these pauses or breaks during the content, what I'll do is I'll go through some of the questions. Now, during the session itself, I may not be able to get to all the questions, but hopefully we'll get to most of them at the end of the program. So that's kind of the introduction. I think usually good housekeeping, everybody stay on mute for the time being. And obviously at the end we can take off the mute for you to ask those questions. However, I'm going to get going now, so just bear with me a second. I'm going to start sharing screens here. So now a little sanity check just to make sure that everybody can see the whiteboards. Can I get a couple of nods of heads? Excellent, excellent. So everybody can see the board there. That's great. Now, what I'm going to do today, obviously, is I'll give you a little bit of background about what I do when I work with businesses and some of the things that I have to take into consideration. Now, the title of the program, as Oisin said, it's actually, he used the word quite clever. I have to admit it, from a marketing perspective, it is quite clever because we all want to get the business that we want. And it's funny, the more time that I spend in business and working with individuals, the more I realize that, there's aspects of everybody's business that you'd like to change and change overnight if you could, but because of, the environment that you're in, maybe the customers that you have, the services or products that you're currently offering, it's sometimes very, very difficult. But what I've seen, and probably you've seen it yourself over the last 3 to 6 months, is that people now have made changes inside their business on a dime. They've literally just flicked a switch and been able to change their business in terms of a different offering to customer, different services to customers, even changing the customers that they're going after with a new service. So it's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to it in terms of making changes inside your business. And I've often seen where I've worked with companies and it's taken them maybe 3 to 6 months to implement a strategic direction, when in truth they could probably have done it a lot quicker, but they're, I suppose, working around their existing offerings are, curtailed by their employees, and I suppose making their own justification as to why it takes so long to make change. But we've all seen it in the last 3 months. We can make change we can make change very, very quickly. So today's talk really is where I'm going to bring a lot of the experience I've had of working with companies and putting a strategy in place. And I suppose that's one of the things that I predominantly do. Yes, I love the teaching. It makes up maybe about 25% of my own workload. The rest of the time is working with companies, SMEs, turning over anywhere between 5 to 7 or 8 million, looking to get into the teens or even more. And I've worked with some wonderful companies over the years. And what I've noticed is the companies that do exceptionally well are driven really well from the very, very top. So the owner managers themselves have a clear idea of what they want from the business at a personal level. So when we start talking about putting a strategy in place, and there's a definition of strategy that I like using all the time, and that's when we have what's called a plan of action to reach a predetermined goal. Now, for me, that's probably the best definition of strategy that I've come across, and trust me, I've been doing this for quite a long time. A plan of action to reach a predetermined goal. Now, obviously, the key word there is that we're talking about having a plan of action, something that we can implement on a day-to-day basis. And what I've done over the years is I've developed a toolbox that expedites strategic development inside a business. I've been working with SMEs now close on 15 years, and every year is a school year. But having a set toolbox that covers all the key areas like financial, market, customer, efficiency, innovation, people, organization, and being able to put a little map in place there that companies can implement quickly and get the results from it, means that they're more likely to move in the direction that they've set out from the company. So that's that predetermined goal. So there's two key factors when you start talking about strategy. Do you have a predetermined goal, and do you have a plan of action to make it happen? Now, I'm going to show you the mechanics of that. So as I said, I'm going to go through all the elements of a good strategic plan that helps you get the business that you want. There's 5 key areas that I'm going to cover. And obviously, we've only got 2 hours, and I won't be able to go into the micro detail and everything, but I'll certainly give you enough for grounding in it that you should be able to take the learnings and apply it directly to your own business. Before I get into, I suppose, the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of building the business that you want, I like to bring people back to, I suppose, some of the core issues of business, particularly on the personal side of it, and that is people's motivation. And predominantly the motivation for the owner managers themselves. And there's a very important question here. So when I meet people for the very first time, when I go into a company to start working with them, usually I can assess the business very, very quickly in terms of what needs to be done based on the introduction, based on the background that they'll give me. But what I'm more interested in is the motivation of the person driving the business to make sure that they're fully engaged. And I know that sounds like a funny statement, that they're fully engaged. Obviously, it's their business. They should be in a situation where, they want the best for the business. But I've seen business owners, when they spoke about wanting to grow their business 20 and 30%, 40%, 50%, doubling business. Yet, when I really dug into their motivations, I was able to find out very, very quickly that's not what they really wanted. And I go back to the title of the program here, get the business that you want. So the very first thing I'm going to ask each one of you to do today is to really think about your own motivations as to why you're in business and what do you want from your business. And for me, a true definition of success in business is that a business facilitates the owner manager to achieve their own personal objectives. Now, that's a very important line, that the business enables the owner manager to achieve their own personal objectives. But what I've noticed with a lot of owner managers is that at times they haven't really put thought into what they want for themselves personally in relation to that business. I've seen owner managers in quite successful businesses yet being unhappy with everything that's going on. And when we drill down into it, it's that the business wasn't giving them enough time to enjoy the success that they had, or the business was, not allowing them to practice the skill set that they had or loved doing. I've seen really good sales guys who were running a business spending most of their time in operations, and vice versa. But when we get down to the bottom of it, we all have to love the business that we're in. We all have to be passionate about it. We all want to be the best at it, and we all want to make money for it. So when it comes to some of the motivations, there's a kind of equation that I have that I kind of introduce people to, and that's profit plus happiness equals success. Now, that sounds like a fairly simple equation to be working on. Profit plus happiness equals success. So when you break that down, we need our business to be profitable, because otherwise than that, it's never going to be in a situation to enable us to achieve our own personal objectives. And I put an image over here on the left-hand side that encapsulates a number of different objectives that people might have at a personal level. But if the business isn't profitable, if it isn't given us the means by which we can reinvest that money into what we want personally, then we are never going to be as motivated by the business as we should be. So our first aim there is to make sure that we put a plan in place, i.e. getting back to our strategy, the mechanics of putting a good working strategy in place for a business that makes our business successful. The second one is enjoying the journey. Yes, we're in business. Yes, we're going to be extremely busy. Yes, we're going to spend most of our time dealing with customers, dealing with staff, dealing with suppliers, dealing with changes that are happening. And obviously during the last 3 months, we've had an unprecedented amount of changes in our own business. But that shouldn't detract us from the long-term view of actually enjoying the journey. While we're in business, are we doing the things that make most sense to us? Are we applying our time effectively? Are we enjoying what we do to a level where we want to keep on learning, that we're hungry for success? And, like I said, we've the guts of whatever, 100 to 150 people here today. All of you are probably in the top tier already by taking some time out to listen to a seminar like this, where you get a little bit of learning that you can bring back to your business that can make a difference to you and your company and the people around you. And all of that really shows that you are first of all, you're motivated. You want to make your business better. But I do recommend you answer that question first. Why do I want to make the business better? What am I going to gain out of it personally? And is the business going to be continually able to give me what I need to achieve my own personal objectives? So one of the exercises I get companies to do when we start any programs is I get them to identify at least 3, and sometimes only 1, sometimes it's 2, but at most 3 different motivators that resonate with them, to say that this is what I want from a business. This is the objectives I'm setting personally that the business has to help me achieve. And when you can answer that question, you, I suppose, start to get a strong feeling of what it's like to have attained that result well in advance of having achieved it. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive. Can we imagine a state in the future where we're already successful, enjoying the benefits of our endeavors in business? So, I have some examples up here. That's quite a regular one I see. Getting the mortgage paid off. Being in the house that I want to live in and getting the mortgage paid off. Having enough financial security that I can do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. It could be more personal than that. Having more time to play golf with one of your kids. It could be enough to make sure that you can secure the education needs for your children. And all of these images, for different people that I've had on different programs, symbolize something to them that is such a strong driver that they're always motivated to keep going, irrespective of the adversities that they see in business. And I've found that people who have that clarity are the ones who enjoy success quicker and enjoy success to a higher degree. So it would be wrong of me to talk about the business that you want purely from a strategic perspective, because I'm going to bring you through the mechanics. I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to give you some of the tools, the tricks, the tips, if you like, the shortcuts. You know, there are shortcuts out there if we get the right systems in place. But if you don't get this right at a fundamental level, then you're going to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Have these visions, have these visuals clear inside your head. And all of these are personal. There's no right or wrong in these. You know, some people want to drive a nice car, extend their houses. This is a very interesting one. I really like getting the explanation behind. Somebody put up an image of a yacht, and one of their objectives is to have their business running effectively or autonomously without them, so that they could sail one of the oceans. They could take a couple of months off, not worry about the business, and sail one of the oceans. But to do that, it meant that we had to put a restructuring in place inside their business, recruit new staff to take on more of the responsibilities, because at that point in time, the owner manager was at the center of the wheel, center of every decision that was made inside the business, and therefore nothing happened without them. So it was a huge change in how they behaved, because they suddenly realized that they were never going to be able to realize their dream if they didn't make fundamental changes in their business. So the motivation to do it now became much stronger for them to make those changes. So whatever your own personal motivation is, I suggest, and this is for the sake of the business, it's for the sake of you and the sake of everybody around you, be clear in terms of what you want personally out of your business. And then we can start talking about the business that you want, building the business that you want to help make that a reality. And it's funny, you know, one of the things that I've seen a lot is when we start getting older, I have to start putting myself in that bracket as well. You know, if you talked to me 10 years ago, I probably mightn't have had the same conversation with you. But as we start to get older, we realize that a lot of what's based around happiness is time. You know, that we'll sacrifice an awful lot of the wealth, you know what I mean, the financial trappings of success for time, and time to do what we want to do best, time to do what we enjoy most. And if you've got a business at the moment that's just not giving you the time to do the things that you hold dear, then you've got to make changes. Because if you don't, you'll eventually fall out of love with your business. That's a fact. You'll eventually fall out of love with your business. And for me, that's the number one cause of businesses not being as successful as what they should be, that people have fallen out of love with it. And the real, I suppose, kind of softer side of this is that when I look at some of the guys who I've worked with who have been extremely successful, is that not only can they put the images on what they want to achieve at some time in the future, they are actually able to capture the feelings long before they've attained that result. So they can see themselves driving that car. They can see themselves with the Friday afternoons off playing golf with their kids. They can see themselves sailing that ocean well in advance of having achieved it. And it's funny, you know, and I've seen somebody who's been extremely driven by a financial target. Now, this person started off extremely wealthy already, so it wasn't for the sake of money. He was treating his business like a game. Can I get my business to be a 500 million euro business? Imagine that. Imagine sitting in a room with an entrepreneur with his management team saying, I've decided that I want my business to be a 500 million euro business. And I can feel it. I think we can do it. I don't see any reason to stop us. And, you know, looking around the management team, everybody was shaking their heads going, oh, that's a big target. The business was turning over about 14, 15 million at the time. So you can imagine his management team looking at him with wide eyes thinking, that's just not feasible. And yet, when he was challenged, he was saying, I can feel it. He says, I can see it. Now, that business to date, this was 5 years ago. That business now is turning over just under 100 million. So they broke their 100 million mark just at the end of last year. They're operating on 5 continents. They have 350 staff, extremely profitable, and are now on a business acquisition trail throughout the planet to try and get to that 500 million euro target. And all because sitting in a meeting 5 years ago, the CEO sat down and said, I can feel the success that we're going to have inside this business. Because if you have the feelings in advance, it starts giving you the belief. And for me, that is such a powerful factor. Having belief in yourself that you're going to be successful, having the belief in yourself that everything you do is going to result in you achieving one or other of these objectives that you have set for yourself. And it's an amazing to see the difference between somebody who believes it and somebody who doesn't. Because I've sat in front of people who said, I want to take my €2 million business and make it 10. But when you challenge them, they don't believe it. And I know when I sit in front of somebody, when they tell me they want to grow and I see the belief in their eyes, I know it doesn't matter what strategy we put in place, they are more likely to be successful. Now, it's over the years I've got a little bit softer on a few things, and I've come up with this phrase, or I've come across this phrase. I've used it so often now that I've actually forgotten even the source of it. But the universe will conspire to help you make it happen. That when you start believing something and you start moving towards it, it's amazing other doors that open for you. It's amazing that you meet the right people, you make the right connections, you meet the right supplier, you hire the right staff member just when you need them. You find the right product that fits a gap in your product portfolio. And it never ceases to amaze me how many events over the years that I've seen at a personal level as much as with my clients, that things just start to move and make sense for them when they start to move in the direction that helps them achieve one or other of those objectives at a personal level. And the feelings are so strong that they can feel that they've succeeded well in advance. Now, I'm going to recommend some light reading for you as well, just if you get a chance. And some of you may have read these books already, or have heard of them, but haven't had a chance to read them. Some of you might believe in this stuff, some of you mightn't. Again, I would suggest that you keep an open mind. Just so you know, my background is in analytical science. In other words, taking stuff apart, analyzing it and putting it back together. So everything that I do is based around analytics. So I have a scientific background when it comes to methodology, process, systemizing. Everything has to be logically thought out. However, I've seen so much of the success that companies have, that business owners have, by understanding their own personal motivators and understanding the rationale behind having the feelings of success in advance before they engage with anything. And that stimulates the belief. And as a result, these business owners are more successful because they're clear about what they want from their business at a personal level. So if you haven't done this before, if you haven't sat down and given yourself the space to think about, what do I really want for my business, then now is the time to do it. When's a good time to do it? 20 years ago and today. It's never too late. I always remember, I think it was my honeymoon about, I won't tell you how many years ago, but we flew into Singapore and we were driving from the airport and there was trees both sides of the road in from the airport. And the driver turned around to me and said, he's very proud, and he goes, these trees were planted 30 years before the airport was built. He says, because the person who ran the country at the time believed that the airport was going to be the economic stimulus for the business, and he wanted people to have a nice welcome when they arrived in the city. Imagine having that forethought and that belief that this was going to fall into place. I just thought it was always a good story that when's a good time to do it? 20 years ago and today. So please take the time, get onto Google Images, find the pictures that resonate with you, and that's a key word, that resonate with you, that makes sense. And when you get those images, hold on to them, put them somewhere that you can see them regularly, and make sure they give you the feelings that, make you a little bit scared, put a little bit of a tickle in your tummy, but that they really resonate with you. And as I said, I've had lots of personal experience with this. It's something I endorse for myself, for my family, and obviously for every business that I work with to get behind this personal objective setting. So that's kind of a little bit about the motivations, the why you're in business. Having a set of guidelines yourself as to what you're aiming for. And these really, as I said, are your own personal objectives. Now, when you understand those, it means that we can start setting our objectives for the business that allow the business or enable the business to help us achieve them. And therefore, when we start looking at our business, we can start setting the vision for the business. And again, really all the business is an objective that we're setting for the future. And, you know, when like a lot of people have different approaches to setting vision statements. I like them to be quantifiable. I like them to have a timeline. I like them to be very clear in terms of what the result is. And often what I do is I get companies to set vision statements that grow ultimately to the end objective. So here, you know, just as an example, you know, that here's a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 15 year a vision statement. And what it's doing, it's setting out an objective for a time in the future of what this company is going to be doing. So in 15 years' time, we'll be operating in all 5 continents. You know, in 5 years' time, we'll have 5 export markets. In 3 years' time, we'll have 1 export market. But in the first year, we're going to build a management team to make all that happen. So these are very qualitative and quantitative. They set a time objective, they're setting a deliverable objective that we can easily and tangibly see whether we're on track or not. And remember, I suppose, you know, this is obviously looking at a business that we want to scale. So this would be a, you know, vision statement or a number of vision statements to support a business that wants to scale. However, I've seen loads of clients and loads of very successful businesses that just want a good lifestyle. They just want a good lifestyle. And that, I suppose, brings us back to these motivators over here, that they want a business to support that lifestyle. And, you know, I always think of that guy who wanted to sail one of the 7 oceans, you know, but when we looked at his business, you know, it wasn't really, yes, he wanted a lifestyle business. He wanted to be able to financially afford the things that he wanted, but he wanted more freedom. He wanted more time, as we mentioned before. But what we noticed was that he was at the center of every decision that was made inside the company. So while it was a lifestyle business in terms of he was in control of everything and he got all the fruits from it, we realized that he was never going to be in a situation where he was going to be free from the day-to-day grind of actually running that business, because all decisions had to come through him. Every decision that was made had to run through him. And again, that is such a restrictor on businesses when the owner is such a very strong personality and wants to be at the center of the wheel on every decision that is made. Because what he's essentially telling everybody is that you can't make a decision without me. And what everybody hears is, I can't make a decision without that person, without the owner being involved. And they wait at times for the owner to make a decision on something that they're well capable of making themselves. And it's an amazing in SMEs in particular, where the owner manager themselves is the limiting factor in terms of growing the business. And if that resonates with any of you guys in terms of how you run your own business, and sometimes, you know, sometimes that's ego driven. Sometimes it's people driven, that, you know, they may not have recruited the right staff to be able to make the decisions autonomously. But there's always a rationale behind it. So if they want to start building a lifestyle business that gives them more time and is profitable, more profitable, then they need to start making changes to how they operate inside the business to give the people more autonomy to make decisions. Sometimes they need to replace those people because they haven't got the capabilities of doing that. That's a tough decision, but yes, it has to be done. And sometimes they just need to start saying, why don't you make that decision? You know, I hired you for a reason. You have the skills, you have the ability, you have the experience. You go make that decision. And if you fail, that's okay. I'll stand behind you. So irrespective of whether you want a business to scale to that level where you're operating on every continent, or whether you want a business that just gives you the profitability and the time that you want, it is still worth your while writing out a vision statement that sets a clear path in terms of the changes that you're going to make over the coming period of time. And that's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Again, the time is dependent on you. And it's funny, a lot of companies that I work with, you know, sometimes just don't see the value in a vision statement, but all it is setting out an objective for a time in the future that you're working towards. And that's why I like it to be quantifiable. That's why I like it to have a timeline. and a particular objective, you know, so in this case, one export market, in this case, management team in place, you know, here, 5 export markets. You know, I was working with a company there just recently who had to pivot due to COVID-19. They actually had 3 business units, and strategically we made a decision that they need to sell one. It's just barely breaking even, but it's taken a huge amount of management time. Second one is okay, but we'll probably line it up for sale over the next maybe 12 to 15 months. But the smallest division that they have is the one that they're most passionate about. And, you know, for me, when I see companies that have a belief and a passion, then most strategies will help them achieve what they set out to. And their objective was quite simple. You know, we need 4 customers in this area by the end of this year. We need 25 by the end of next year, and we need 50 by the end of 2023. So their vision statement was customer driven. We need to acquire these customers to have this business at a level that says that we'll be sustainable. So that's a very simple vision statement. But again, just setting out an objective. And this lines up with the type of business that you want, whether it be a scalable business or a lifestyle business. Now, the next step on the path here is once we get a vision statement in place. Now you'll notice I'm moving strategy down the board here because, you know, for me, dare I say, it's a strategy can be quite easy. Plan of action to reach a predetermined goal. And usually within, you know, a very short period of time of working with a business, we can have a working strategy in place, the mechanics of making it happen. But we need to get these background areas done first for them to have a foundation to build upon, i.e. the motivations for the owner manager as to why they're doing it, and the objectives being set for the business, which aligns with the owner manager's own personal objectives. And that's alignment is significantly important, because if these are misaligned, then it's very hard to get the rest of the business right. Believe it or not, it's really exceptionally hard from a strategic perspective to get the right strategy in place if these are misaligned. The motivations of the owner managers don't match the business vision, or vice versa. That leads to a lot of unhappiness. And remember, we said we're striving for success here. Profit plus happiness equals success. So if we get the motivation right, we know what we want from the business ourselves as a personal owner, as an owner manager, and we can set that vision in terms of what the business is going to look like in 1, 3, 5, 10, 15 years time. Then that clarity is going to carry you through, because on the left hand side, these connect each other. Feelings connect with motivation, belief connect with vision. If you have those, we're very well set up. So these kind of answer the, you know, what are we going to achieve? What are we going to achieve over a period of time? The next thing that we start looking at is the start of the question, how do we achieve it? And this is where we get into having a clear company purpose. Now, when we start talking about company purpose, now this phrase is often intermingled with company vision. That a company has a mission statement, particularly in larger organizations. You'll see that they have got mission statements. When you walk inside the door, you'll see their mission statement. When you log onto their website, you'll see their mission statement. Personally, again, I originally came from, you know, a large multinational and very purpose driven. And I remember every office that I used to walk into around the globe, and I used to do a lot of traveling with them. The first thing you saw behind the counter of reception was the mission statement. But what I prefer the term, when we start working with SMEs, purpose statement. What is the purpose of your business? We know at a personal level, and these are all the personal bits up here, we know at a personal level, motivation, vision. But in terms of what the company does, how it does it, and how it benefits others, if you are able to answer that question and answer it succinctly, it means you fully understand what you're about. And it makes it easier for other companies to understand what you're about. There's a really good book I recommend. Sorry, I should have took a screenshot of it. It's called Story Brand by Donald Miller. And if you get a chance, it's a very short book. You'll read it maybe in 2 or 3 days. Story Brand by Donald Miller. And it essentially kind of describes the relationship between customer and supplier, but it does it in the context of describing blockbuster movies. So, you know, you've got a really good recipe for success there. You get to read about blockbuster movies, but you get to understand it from a business perspective. And in most movies, you know, the customer, in our case, the hero, needs other people to help them on their journey. You know, you might have a hero arriving in a foreign land trying to save his wife or his daughter. You can guess the movie. And he finds somebody locally to help him with guns and passports and all the ammunition that he needs, etc. When you bring that relationship back to a customer and supplier, we're not the center of the movie, the hero is. In this case, the customer is the center of the story. We're there to help them on their journey, not to become the center of their story. And our purpose needs to be succinct in such a way that when they meet us for the first time, they're able to fully understand how we're going to benefit them. And, you know, when I do eventually move down to strategy, and I'm getting closer to it, you'll see I'm edging my way towards it. You know, a key part of that often is the sales strategy, the marketing strategy. And I absolutely refuse to even look at the strategic planning on sales and marketing until a company has told me its purpose statement. And I'll keep going at it until we understand the purpose of the business, because then we can sell on purpose. We can market on purpose. And we can easily demonstrate how we're going to benefit the company our customers that we're going to work with. So if you have a purpose statement that you are currently, you know, have in play, I'd like you to go back and look at those 3 different parameters. Does it say all of those? And does it say in such a way that it's easy for people to understand? This is what we do. This is how we do it, and how we benefit others. And again, I'm just going to pull some quick samples here of purpose statements. Oh, that's nice. Bear with me 1 second. So there's some examples of purpose statements that different organizations have. You know, and I suppose it'd be wrong if I didn't actually put in my own one there as well. So that's my one there at the very bottom, from my business. And very simply put, transform the way owner managers think and give them personal and business satisfaction. Oops. Transform the way owner managers think and give them personal and business satisfaction. This is what we do, this is how we do it, and how it benefits others. When we look at Tesla, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, this is what we do, how we do it, and how it's going to benefit others. Workday, HR software, to put people at the center of enterprise software. This is what we do, how we do it, and how we benefit others. And I like Microsoft's, to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This is what we do, how we do it, and how we benefit others. So again, I highly recommend that you go back and look at your own mission statement, if you want to call it that. But personally, as I said, from an SME perspective, I like to call it your purpose statement, and see, does it say those 3 things? And what's really important about this is when you say it, it shouldn't take a lot of energy for the person who's listening to it to fully understand what you do, how you do it, and how it benefits others. Sharon, I'm going to jump to you for a second, if that's okay, and see, do we have any questions in there that has been popped up just before I move into the strategic side?
Yeah, no problem. So nothing so far, Damien. You must be exceptionally clear in your explanations. But I'll put it out there. Does anyone want to type in a question? Anything come up about what Damien has spoken about so far?
All good so far.
Now we have one question here. So how do we do it? I don't see that in the examples. So I'm assuming this is around creating the vision and creating the purpose. Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose some of the brands are so synonymous, you know, like Microsoft is an IT company, you know, and so when we start talking about to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, they're at such a brand stage that they're able to say that we're an IT company, we provide IT, and it's synonymous with what we do. So that's, I suppose, one of the examples there in terms of, you know, when you do reach a brand recognition, you can actually take a couple of liberties with your purpose statement, but it takes a while to get there. But imagine you're going to a networking meeting and somebody asks you for the first time, tell me a little bit about your business. They're waiting for you to tell them something as to whether you're going to be a benefit to them, whether you're going to be just a nice acquaintance that you're going to meet, or maybe that you're a potential business competitor. And your purpose statement should do all of those things: what we do, how we do it, how we benefit others. And if it resonates with them, and I think there's a key word here that we have to think about, and it's resonate. If it resonates with people, it'll make an immediate connection.
Okay.
And if it doesn't resonate, it means that from a customer's perspective, you won't be the right supplier for them. And that's okay too.
Okay. And so really what you're saying, Damien, is that the purpose statement is so clear that probably a 5-year-old can understand it. And the reality is that, an adult person, obviously, I mean, for the most part, most of us aren't probably marketing to 5-year-olds, but the subconscious, I know you've mentioned before about the various books, but a lot of that is to do with the subconscious and the fact that the subconscious understands very simple language. It doesn't
Absolutely
like very complicated language. It doesn't get it. It doesn't understand it. Therefore, it doesn't resonate. Just somebody there had a good one, and I think this is true. You might end up with a few different purpose statements. What's your advice around that?
To be honest, I think you need one clear one. Now, it's okay for different divisions to maybe have a subset of that. But for me, again, usually from an SME perspective, it is usually one clear purpose statement that is used to underpin the entire organization. So it's there as the kind of the foundation of what they do, how they do it, and how they benefit others. It leads to the marketing team knowing how to position a USP. It leads to the sales team being able to communicate effectively how these products are going to satisfy the need of the customer in a way that's unequivocal. So for me, really, I think it's one purpose statement for the organization rather than multiple. It's very seldom you see any large company that would have more than one mission statement. And we're using purpose statements as the equivalent of that. So one purpose statement really is the way to go.
Yeah, and I think you've brought up a very good point there. The purpose statement isn't marketing. The purpose statement is the purpose statement. It's in black and white, set out very simply what the purpose of your business is. And after that, then you build the marketing into that and the sales
Correct.
into that and whatever else. But that's like the foundation block as such.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Just gives you the kind of as I said, the foundation. Can you market effectively if you can't state what you do, how you do it, or how you benefit others? Can you sell effectively if you don't meet those key criteria? And again, it's a hard thing to do, but once you get it, it's extremely effective for your business.
Right. Okay. Somebody has so actually I'm just going to remind of that book that you mentioned, Story Brand by
Donald Miller.
Donald Miller. Okay, perfect. We have that. Another really good question here. How do personality traits tie into success? Some people are naturally driven. Can you overcome this by following these steps?
Yeah, like again, I suppose it's great to have a driven individual, but you need to make sure that they're driven with the right motivators. So like if somebody is just exclusively driven by money, it's going to be very hard for everybody to buy into that particular vision. If somebody is driven by business success, I think a lot of people can actually get behind it. So I most of the business owners that I've worked with, I like the various different degrees of drive. And I suppose it's getting to turn that into the engine that drives the rest of the business and have it in such a way that we're able to communicate that message effectively. Often what I have to do when it comes to a vision statement is that the drive or the vision of the owner manager is so personal that I get them to keep it to themselves, that it's just personal to them. So rather than them sharing it with the entire organization, because sometimes it's self-centered, it's what they want from the business, which is fine by them because it's their business, they get the chance to build it in the way that they want. And that they concentrate on communicating the purpose statement rather than the vision statement. So at times, often we have what's called an internal vision, which is unique to the owner manager, and an external vision that allows that they can communicate. And that's often reflective of whether their drive, I suppose, is something that people can latch onto and use as a motivator.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Some great questions coming in here actually. Is sequence important? Is sequence important when defining these, or do you have to do motivation before you have to do vision, or
absolutely.
Before you do vision?
The motivation, trust me, you start with the motivation. You have to start with the motivation. You have to have that understanding of what you want yourself. You know, because if you don't fully understand that, it's going to be very hard for you to build the business that enables you to actually make that a reality. So that's why I've linked the I suppose the vision and the motivation to each other. But it always starts with the motivation. Always start with the motivation. Then you set the vision accordingly. And once you understand that, it's like you've kind of gone, right, now I understand the future objectives for the business that help me achieve my own personal objectives, and I can set the objectives for the business that correlate with that. So yes, the sequence is quite important.
Okay, brilliant. Another really nice question here. Have you found that successful people have certain qualities, or is it more strategy, etc.?
I've seen all types of owner managers being successful. I've seen very relaxed people being hugely successful. I've seen driven people being hugely successful. So there's no criteria there other than they're very clear themselves as to what they want. And they're very clear that the business has to be the provider of this. And therefore they'll move heaven and earth to build that business in such a way that enables them to achieve their own personal objectives. And that could be building the right management team so that they can step back from their business. It could be that they're hiring specific people so that they can concentrate on areas that they're best at. So multiple kind of answers to that, Sharon.
Okay. Another good question. Is the purpose statement the same as a value statement?
No. Values, again, I often term values as kind of the glue that holds the whole organization together. So purpose statement really is about, as I said, you'll be able to communicate very effectively how you're going to service your customers, and that they can get that in a very short sentence. Values is very much your way of working, and values set the behaviors of everybody inside your organization. So aligned with this, when we talk about the mechanics inside the business, you know, so strategies is the plan of action to reach the predetermined goal. The behaviors that you want inside the organization are often defined by the values, and the values are usually set by the owner manager themselves. The tone of the business is usually set by the owner manager themselves. The values usually are a reflection of the owner manager. Therefore, it's very important for the owner manager to understand what those values are. And again, that could be 1 value, 2 value, 3 values, up to 5 values. I wouldn't have many more than that. And that dictates the way of working, or the wow, and it dictates behaviors. And that's the strength of values, but it's done on it's kind of the separate exercise to purpose, aligned with it, but a separate exercise.
Right. Okay. So it's really the values are that deep inner thing. This is how we do business. So respect
Correct.
is hugely important to
Exactly.
us. Honesty,
Trust, professionalism, resilience, etc., etc.
Perfect. Now,
Okay.
excellent. Can I I'm going to pop in this last question because this is a really, really good one. Suggestions for doing this as one person. So we have all kinds of different businesses on the call. Some people will have staff and organizations. Other people will be just on their own. So how do you adapt it to this?
I'll be honest with you. It doesn't matter whether you're one person, one-man show, or you've got 100 people in your organization. The methodology is exactly the same. You start with what you want yourself, and then you start envisaging the business that's going to help you achieve that. Okay. There's nothing wrong with a sole trader setting out a vision statement for their own business. Absolutely not, in the same way that a large organization would do it. So to be honest, Sharon, I found that irrespective of the size of the business, these are fundamentals. They are best practice. They're building blocks that everybody should use and can use to achieve their own personal and business success. So size doesn't matter on this one.
Great, good to know. Right, I'm going to take note of the questions and I'm going to let you keep plowing ahead, and I'll come back in afterwards. Thanks, Perfect. Damien.
Good stuff. Now, guys, so we've done the motivation, we've done the vision statement, we've done the purpose statement, and we've understand the connection between each one of them and the order by which they need to be done. And that was a really good question in terms of, can we do this in order? My advice is yes. Sometimes I've seen companies that are already well into the strategy side without having to go back and without having these thought about. But when they go back and do them, they make changes to their strategy accordingly. But that's the order I recommend everybody to do them. Motivation first, understand them. And as I said, go onto Google Images and download some images that resonate with you. And they do have to resonate. Like, this is a very strong word here, but they do have to resonate with you. Set your vision statement, and only set a vision statement that aligns with your motivators. Don't set something that doesn't align with your motivators. And then when you get that done, we can talk about, right, what sort of business do I want to have in terms of satisfying the customer need? What do I do? What am I passionate about? What am I best at? And this question here, how do I benefit others? Let's get that down into a very succinct statement. And then we can start getting on to our strategic planning. Then we can start talking about this plan of action to reach a predetermined goal. And, I said at the very start that, that there's mechanics here that we can put in place to start building the business that you want. These are all asking you the hard question, what do I really want from the business? This is going to answer, how am I going to make that happen? Purpose statements just keeps you on track to make sure that everything is on purpose. Imagine being able to ask yourself, will I take on that product as part of my portfolio? Well, it's not really what we do, then we shouldn't do it. Do we really, is this product going to be beneficial to our customer base? Well, no, not really. It's just going to make us a bit more money. Times you got to make that decision. I know at C19, everyone's looking for different avenues, but I strongly recommend you don't stray from purpose. I've seen a lot of companies suddenly moving into the sale of PPE that never did it, has nothing got to do with their company purpose. Are they doing it effectively? Are they doing it as good as companies who have that as their sole mission? Absolutely not. And it becomes apparent very quickly. And what they end up doing is diluting their own value structure, their own purpose statement, and their own wherewithal by trying to make that happen. So, but now we get, I suppose, as I said, down to the mechanics. How do we build a strategy that allows us to achieve the business that we want? Now, I'm going to start off with financial. So, plan of action to reach a predetermined goal. When we start setting out this vision statement over here, it's quantifiable. We can set vision statements in terms of revenue figures. We can often say we want to be number one in the marketplace, but that has connotations. That means number one market size, number one in terms of revenue. But we need to be able to set financial targets that align with that. So again, one of the exercises that I get companies to do at the very, very start of any engagement is I get them to map out what their revenue profile looks like right now. So get them to do a, let's say, a revenue profile for their business. And in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different key revenue sources inside the company. So I get them to look back at their previous trading period, whether that's their trading year, trading quarter, or maybe over the last period of 2 years or whatever. Looking at a granular level, where are they making their money? And I get them to actually be as granular as possible. And I'll just show you something that is to kind of give you the. So in this case here, what they've done is they've mapped out their overall net figures from looking at their previous sales figures, and they've set targets in place for each of the granular levels of their business for 2020, revised obviously with everything that's going on in the marketplace, and then reset for 21. So they've looked at their revenue sources at a granular level and said, yeah, I know exactly where my revenue engine is. Now, I always get companies to do this from 2 perspectives, one from a revenue perspective and one from a profitability perspective. And that makes sure that we fully understand, yes, it may be a revenue generator, but we need to make sure that it's profitable. Remember that profit plus happiness equals success? We need to make sure they're profitable. By having the granular level at it, it means that we can see in very clear terms how successful we are in turning our revenue lines into profitability. And sometimes when we analyze it, we get, I've often seen companies getting an epiphany going, oh my God, I can now see that 40% of our revenue is coming from one customer, or 40% of revenue is coming from one sector, or one product, or one service. We either can make a choice to grow that, or we need to dilute it based on the strategic plan that they have for the business. So by having that granularity means that you can start making decisions at a product or a service level. In this instance here, we've quarter 4 2020 right up as far as quarter 2 2022, and in this case we're seeing a huge fall off in one of the offerings. Now, if I equate that back to one of my clients that is on one of the programs, like they experienced a 98% drop in revenue over the second quarter of this year. for everything that's going on in C19, working in towards the hospitality sector, and suddenly things go pear-shaped with C19 and their market falls. 98%. But so if I drew their pie chart, you know, that 2%, that sliver of 2% still gives them hope. And what they turned around and said, well, you know what, that 2% is probably going to be enough to keep us going. So we need to change that 2% now into 25% of our revenue for the remainder of 2020. So they put a strategic plan in place to take that, what is 2% of their overall business, to become, you know, an estimated 25% of what will be their business going forward. But they've done that by analyzing at a granular level and an understanding at a granular level of all of their revenue sources. And if you fully understand that picture, it means you can start developing a strategy around key revenue generators. You can see what products are going to fall off, and you can see what products are on the rise. You can even see the ones that are going to be your steady Eddie, the ones that are going to keep the lights on, keep the bills paid. And understanding those means that you can start recruiting the right people for it, the right number of people for it. If you see a growth sector, and it's funny, when I mentioned that business before that's now turning that 3 digits in terms of turnover. When we did this at the very, very start, and this is before they really started on the map of acceleration, they looked at one of their segments, which at the time was 4% of their turnover, and said that's going to be the future of the company. Imagine looking at 96% of your revenue and saying, you know what, that's not the business I want anymore. The business that I want is based around that 4%. And you know what, I'm going to put a strategy in place to grow that. And had such a belief in it that they invested significant sums in R&D to get that revenue in. And then they started building the organization to be able to sell it. So there's 2 aspects here. First of all, we need to put in place the understanding of what our current revenues are, but we also need to map out what our future revenue is going to look like. So this is the now. So this is what our revenue looks like now. And if we sat with our figures in front of us and looked at it granularly and said, right, by the end of 2020 or by the end of 21, I'm going to take this figure here and I'm going to turn it into this figure here. I'm going to grow it by at least maybe 30–40%. So I'm now setting out a strategy that says, a financial strategy that says, I want to grow the business by 20–30% for this product or service. That in turn means I probably need to hire different staff to make it happen, or I need to retrain or cross-train staff to make it happen, but you're allowing your financial targets set strategic direction. And remember, do it from a revenue perspective, but more importantly, do it from a profitability perspective. And everyone on this call today should be able to look at their revenue streams, put a label on them, a product or a service, see how much you got in last year, how much profit or contribution there was to the bottom line, and then make a decision as to how you're going to treat that product over the next 2 to 3 years. Am I going to keep it steady? Am I going to concentrate on it and grow it? Do I recognize in there that there's a product or revenue stream that's going to fall off, that's no longer going to be available to me? And that's C19 aside, it could just be a general attrition in the marketplace. But you're making a strategy around future figures that you're setting. Now remember, these are in line with the overall company objectives, which is the equivalent of your vision statement. That's why it's important to have your vision statement done first, because it'll help you start creating those figures. And I've seen companies setting figures that we want to double business over the next 3 years. I've seen companies who say, like, we're turning over 2.5 million now. I want to be turning over 5 or 6 within 3 years' time. And the question is, have we got the wherewithal to make it happen? Do we have the products in our range to be able to do that? Because if that's the case, then we need to start answering questions around our financials, going, right, can we get the cash flow in place and the investment in place to concentrate on growing these services to where we want them to match these figures? And in every instance that I've done this, I've seen companies change or adapt or amend their company strategy to reflect what needs to be done to achieve these figures. So that's the first part of setting your strategic plan in place, is the understanding of what the future revenue of the company is going to look like and the breakdown of that revenue. And as I said, it'll dictate people, it'll dictate focus, it'll dictate marketing, etc. It has, I suppose, a lot of impacts over the rest of the strategic decisions. So that's the start of strategy, starting with financial. see where your money is coming now and look at where your money is going to come from in future. And if you haven't got that granularity, you need to get it. Now, as part of the other financial planning that you need to do, obviously you need to make sure that you've got an understanding of your cash flow, an understanding of the other revenue sources available to you. And as Oisin pointed out there this morning, the government are putting other sources in place here to give you access to working capital. But if you're going to concentrate on growing a particular product area, you're going to have to invest in it, both from a sales and marketing perspective. And we'll cover those in just a moment. So that's the first aspect of strategy in terms of setting a financial target, a financial target-driven strategy over a couple of years. The next thing that I want to cover is market.
Damien, actually, sorry, seeing as you're just transitioning there from one to the other, can I ask you two quick questions that I think actually will help a lot of people in the room? The first one is, what is the best way to move from a lifestyle business to be able to scale? Simple steps.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I suppose, again, we got to go back to these motivators as to why we want to do this. You know, why do we want to move from a lifestyle to a scaling business? Because in a lifestyle business, the owner manager is usually at the center of that cog, center of that wheel in terms of making the decisions. In a scaling business, it's usually facilitated by a team of people that's there at the very, very top. If the requirements of the owner manager is that I want more time, or, you know what I mean, I do want more money so that I can make use of my time more effectively, then they're going to have to start making changes to how they operate and the company operates to facilitate that. So really what I would start to do is I'd set out these financial targets first around the areas that the company is most passionate about. And I'd look to the figures that I'm setting over the next 2 to 3 years. And then I'd ask very honestly going, have I got the capabilities within the company already to facilitate that? And then the second question I'd be asking is, am I a barrier to achieving those figures? Now, if the answer is yes to any of those questions, then from a lifestyle business to a scaling business, I'd start putting the structures in place to make those changes. And usually that would start with people. I'd start looking at the people that I require to help me support the roles or the jobs inside the business that I as an owner manager don't like doing or are not best at. And I would hire people that are I suppose, aligned from a passion perspective about the product or service that you're trying to offer. And when it comes to people, and again, we're going to address this a little bit later, we'll talk about some of the motivating factors that you need in place to incentivize these people to make them part of your organization and that success. But that lifestyle change to a scaling change is built around people and an understanding of motivators.
Okay, perfect. And I know as a small business, sometimes you may, you know, it may strike the fear of God into you when you think of the thoughts of taking on people, but you may not necessarily need to dive into employing people. It could be taking, you know, freelancers, for example. But again, as you say, somebody is passionate, somebody that's aligned with what you want to do, etc. So it's not always diving in the deep end. You can dip in there and see. Perfect. Correct. I have another excellent question, and then I'll allow you to get on, Damien. If you have a group of key customers who avails of products and services, but a section of your business that is not profitable and time consuming is something that they avail of, how do you cut that from your portfolio without damaging customer relations? Yeah, it's a really good question. And I suppose this is again where you have to be, I suppose, strategic about how you do it. There's always, at times, there's loss leaders inside our business. At times, there's products where, you know, if you had an option of stop doing it, you would. However, it's a necessary evil inside the business to continue it. And sometimes you just, excuse the phrase, you just got to suck it up at times and just get on with it. Sometimes, if it's detrimental to the business overall, and this is where I suppose this is get dangerous. If there's a product or service that's detrimental to the business overall, that you're not able to do it at the level that you want to do it, or you're not capable of being the best at it inside the market, then I would suggest that over a phase basis, you start moving those customers onto either a different product, or you start, I suppose, changing the customer base back to the areas that you're most passionate about and that you're best at. So sometimes it's just a necessary evil, Sharon, and sometimes it's something that you can actively work on changing over a period of time. But I suppose when you look at this overall, you know, we've already established businesses. Everybody on this program, on this webinar, probably have a business ongoing at the moment that's generating revenue.
And in a lot of cases, we've built it up to be a little bit of a machine. We get our referrals, we get our customers coming in, and it means that we're very reactive to what's happening to the revenue sources as they walk inside the door. What I'm saying here is that don't say no while you're saying yes. You can keep going with the business that you currently have right now while you're being proactive or planning the business that you want in the future, so that you can start gradually making those changes that, you know what, it's okay. We have some products or services that we don't really like doing now, but in the future, in 2 to 3 years' time, I'm going to move my product portfolio and service portfolio in a different direction. So I start planning for that right now. So where you are right now doesn't dictate where you're going to be in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I suppose as well, going back to that idea of people, maybe there's an option there that somebody can take that side of the business, or even in terms of collaboration with another business. Would that be a fair thing to say? You're referring people on if they're of high quality, obviously, and all of that, and just maybe thinking a little bit differently in that sense.
Absolutely. And that's what a lot of companies do, particularly in areas where they don't feel that that's the right product for them, yet their customers have an expectation, or customers know them by reputation to have a service there. And referring them on to somebody you trust is a really good way of doing that. But as I said to you, you could sometimes need to be reactive on products that walk inside the door, or revenue that walks inside the door. But where I want you to be proactive in is building the organization that you want for the future, and making those changes in a way that, I suppose, don't harm your existing customer base, but complements or grows it over the medium to long term. And that's what future planning is about. And I suppose that's why having that granularity here in this diagram just allows you to start making those decisions at a product by product basis as to what fits for you. And you know, there's a thing I wasn't going to cover on this, but I suppose it's coming up now. But like, you know, one of the things that I highly recommend people do is there's a really good book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And again, another good book that if anybody hasn't read it, I'd highly recommend it. Good to Great by Jim Collins. And he has a philosophy called the hedgehog principle. And essentially it's based around 3 circles. And those 3 circles are, the first one is passion. The second one is best at. And the third one is your economic drivers. Now, the reason why he's broken them down into those 3 different areas, and the recommendation is, and this is for every business, that you should, first of all, fully understand all of the areas that you're passionate about. And again, it's a very simple exercise. Imagine getting a blank piece of paper, getting your staff together and saying, right, what is the company passionate about? And have that understanding in place. And I love to see that in the About Us section on websites. You know, so that when you immediately look at somebody's website and you see geez, they're really passionate about this area, and that kind of tells the story of who they are. In this bit over here, this circle over here on the left-hand side, I find is the strategic circle, because in a lot of cases, businesses can be good. They can be good at something right now, but they can be planned to be best at something in future. And for me, that's where strategy really comes into play. That we've looked at our revenue sources over here, so we've identified, you know, where all these revenue sources are, and then we go back and say, right, are we passionate about those revenue sources? You know, are they a product or service that we're really passionate about doing? Are we either just good at it right now, or are we best at it right now? And if we're not best at it right now, then you could be categorized as what's called a Me Too business. What do you provide? Oh, I'm in retail. Oh, me too. What do you provide? Oh, I provide such and such a service. Oh, me too. A lot of Me Too businesses are good at stuff right now, but they can put a strategy in place to be best at something in future. And I've seen companies who've looked at their product or service base going, do you know what? I'm going to develop a niche or a market around the areas that we're going to be best at. And I'm going to spend my time moving my portfolio from all these things that we're good at to the things that we're best at. And you know what comes with that? Financial reward. Because your customers start to appreciate that this is something you're passionate about and that you're best at, and they'll start referring you on to an awful lot of their peers. And that bit in the middle is, I suppose, what we're all striving for is, can we build a business that answers those three different areas? That we're doing things that we're always passionate about at a personal and at a business level. Are we doing things that we're going to be best at? And are we doing things that are profitable? And for me, you should be answering yes to all of those circles to proceed in any level of business. If you really want the business that you deserve and start wanting building a business that is future-proofed, that you'll always be satisfied by it, that if you are able to answer yes to all of those circles, yes, I'm passionate about it, yes, I'm going to be best at it, and yes, it makes economic sense, I'm going to take that product on. Should I hire that person? Are they passionate as we are? Are they either good at something that we do right now, or are they going to help us to be best at something in future? And does it make financial sense? Yes, we'll take that person on. So Sharon, I'm after going off on a tangent there and answering that question. But you can see how when we start looking at all the things that are personal motivators inside the business, as SMEs, passion is a huge part of it. And that we want to be passionate about what we do, and we want our customers to see us as being passionate about what we do. And you know what? We strive to be best at it. But we need to make sure that we're making money, because if we don't have profitability, so we might, this might make us happy. And this might make us happy. But you remember what I said about profit plus happiness equals success? We need to have this bit here. And that can start dictating your future financial areas, where you suddenly realize there's a part of my business that I really love, that I'm passionate about, and it's only making up 10 or 15%. And you know what? I want that to be making up 50 or 60% of my business in the future. And I'm going to make those changes. I'm going to stop offering that service, or I'm going to start offering the services that I actually want. And I'm going to do it in a way that I'm going to be best at it, and I'm going to price it accordingly so that it's profitable. Yeah. So Sharon, sorry, that was a big tangent, but I hope it answers the question.
It absolutely does. And I think, you know, as a small business owner, sometimes you can see all those zeros and think, Jesus, does this actually apply to me? But I think what you just went through there perfectly applies. At the end of the day, it does not matter at what scale you're working at, all of this applies. So actually, I think that was all for a good reason. Where focus goes, energy flows.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Now, right. So I'm going to continue on. I'm just conscious of time. We're at 11:20, so I have a good bit to try and get to before we end the session. And I do want to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions as well. Now, when we've set out our targets on our financials and we can see where the company is going, we can see that direction. And I do have to apologize. I'm looking at my graphs and they're getting very scribbly, and I have a tendency when I get excited about stuff that I start to get very squiggly. So apologies to everybody who's looking at loads of lines on a graph. I'll try and behave myself a little bit better when I'm drawing in future. But when we start seeing these areas that are, you know, ones that we're identifying for growth, I want to make that a big arrow. So this is something that we're saying, right, we're going to change our model to be best at something in future that makes financial sense for us, and we're going to set a target in line with the overall vision of the business. Then we need to position ourselves in the market. Then we need to have an understanding of where does that product or service sit, who do I sell it to, and how am I going to get that message out into the marketplace. And I suppose this is where we start moving into, you know, what we call the marketing matrix. And you know, there's I suppose a little bit of fundamental, I suppose, before we go into some of the mechanics of marketing. I just always find that this little diagram here is very, very, I suppose, easy to understand, and sometimes can allow us to position ourselves or help us make a decision as to where we position ourselves. That when it comes to our marketing options, we can try and market to everybody, or we can try to market to a select group of customers on a specific product or service. And we have to make a decision as to how we're going to position our products. Mass marketing, you know, where you're trying to reach all customers. And I think over the last couple of years, I think people have realized or cottoned on to, you know, you cannot be a mass marketer anymore. You know, I remember back in the days of faxes, you know, if you had a fax, nearly you'd receive an offer or something coming out of your machine, because it had nothing to do with you, but just because you had a fax number, it would come out. And I know I'm showing my age when I start talking about faxes, but like mass marketing was fine, you know, and some people still, you see the blanket emails, or the blanket emails coming in, you see the flyers coming in through the door, coming in on the local newspaper. Some cases it's relevant, some cases it's not, but it costs time and money. When you're looking at a niche strategy, so you've identified a product or service, and again, I go back to this financial diagram here, that you've identified an area that you want to grow, and you're saying, right, I know that that's going to be more relevant for one sector more than another, or one customer type more than another. Then I can start developing what's called a niche strategy, and I can be much more focused in terms of how I spend my marketing buck. Now, it still takes time and it still takes money, but it just means that you're going to spend the same, you could spend the same amount of money as over here, but in a much more targeted way. So, am I going to have a niche mass strategy or a niche strategy? Now, think about having a niche strategy means that you can start building up expertise in the area that you're going after. I remember working with a company in the West, and we did their financial pie chart. Where's their revenue coming from now, and where's their revenue going to be in the future? But when we looked at where the revenue is now, we noticed that almost 80% of their revenue was geared towards one sector. They were, it was an IT company, but they were actually setting themselves up as being a generalist IT company. But when we looked at their revenue breakdown, we saw that 80% was coming from one market sector. Now, when we looked at their website and we looked at all their marketing bling, they were trying to actually communicate to everybody who had an IT requirement. But their financials said, do you know what? You're not a generalist IT company. You're actually a specialist IT company. So over the years, you've built up a specialism. And what they decided to do was change their entire strategy around growing that 80%, of recognizing that 80% made up most of their business, and gearing all of their marketing spend to grow that pie chart, so to make that pie chart bigger, and do it in the hospitality area. And that meant that we developed what's called a prime strategy, where we wanted to show our expertise in a particular area. And it meant all of our marketing was focused on displaying our expertise. And if you're able to display your expertise time and time again, you're said to assume what's called a prime position in the market. And for all of the SMEs out there, you're probably wondering, how do I get a position of prime? Well, it means that you have an offering that's of use by your customers, and your customers recognize you as being a supplier of choice for that particular product or service. And we do that by gearing our website accordingly, so that if we're an IT company and we're specializing towards one sector, now when you go onto their website, it screams that sector. It doesn't scream any other sector. Now, we made a decision, we won't say no while we're saying yes. And you've heard me use that phrase before. They still didn't say no to other business that kept walking in the door from them, from their previous customers, but to say yes to position themselves as a strategic supplier to the sector that they were going after. And they changed their recruitment to have more expertise because they wanted to be best at this area. So only people coming from that sector with that IT knowledge were recruited. They targeted their revenue spend sponsoring the right customer events that had their key customers at. They did loads of blogs, white papers, spoke at conferences, all geared towards the customer base that they identified that they were going to build that niche strategy for. And the thing about having that strategy that's concentrated on one specific sector is that if you stay here long enough, over time, you become known as the authority in that space. And as a marketing strategy, it's actually quite an effective tool for you to set a target that, you know what, I think it's effective for us to either have a niche strategy where we might identify 2 or 3 niches inside our business offering that our product or services are relevant for, and we gear our marketing spend towards that. And we can be reactive to the other business that walks in, but we're going to be proactive towards that market area. And we are going to make sure that we are well known for the services we provide to them and become what's called a prime mover. So you guys, all of you guys who are businesses there, you should be striving to become well known in your area for the product or service that you're offering, and become achieve that prime position. And over a couple of years, this doesn't happen overnight. Over a couple of years, if you stay in prime, you eventually move towards authority. And that's where the real money starts for you, where everything that you become the mover and shaker in that space. You become the one to watch. When you say something, people listen to it. There's a good kind of a history in Ireland that people who, particularly in the economists, we've some well-known celebrity economists that, you know, have been talking about the economy for such a long time that they're now an authority, be it wrong or be it right. I won't go into any specific names, but just I'm sure all of you know economists that are the go-to people for RTE, the go-to people for ISME and the SFA to get as part of their workshops. But in every business, we have prime movers, our authorities, and you can make a decision based on your financial targets that you want to be one of those. So that's the marketing matrix. Now, when we start looking at this strategy over here, and I'm going to just identify this side of the coin because I think it's most relevant to most businesses that are on this program here, then we can start looking at developing either what's called a vertical strategy or a horizontal strategy in terms of defining our market position. Now, what I mean by a vertical strategy is that, remember back to your financial target setting, we broke everything down into product 1, product 2, or service 1 or service 2. And we've got targets set for them. And we start looking at how we're going to grow those particular revenue streams. And if we make a decision that we're going to be the best at something, if we go back to that model over on the right-hand side, we're going to be the best at something, then we can identify that we're either going to be best at a product level, or we're going to be best at a sector or offering level. Okay, so if we're going to be best at a product level, it means we're going to have a product strategy. And that means that's called a horizontal strategy. And that means that we're going to develop all of our USPs and our offering around our products. That's a horizontal strategy. So when somebody asks you what you do, how do you do it, how do you benefit others, it's going to be product focused. And again, if we go onto our websites or our marketing material, we'll see that these products are heavily focused on. If we're going after what's called a vertical strategy, if we're going after a vertical strategy, it means we're identifying sectors of the market that we're going to be specialist in. Now, remember, just because you have a specialism doesn't mean that you're exclusively delivering to that service or to that sector. You could have multiple different sectors, but you're deciding as part of your mix, based on your passion, based on what you're best at, that there's a group of customers or a customer base out there that really will appreciate what you're trying to do and accept you for the authority that you are, providing you obviously get that message out there. So if we identify a vertical strategy, it means that we're gearing ourselves to go after a specific type of customer in a sector. And all of our communications, all of our marketing communications are geared around that sector fully understanding our purpose, what we do, how we do it, and how we benefit them. And when we start doing this, it means we can get very specific. We can say, well, this product is suitable for the manufacturing industry. And when we put that X in there, we can kind of go, right, who's the customer? Who's the specific buyer that we're going to target for that offering? And that means that we're marketing specifically to target that customer. It's like we have a voice or a megaphone in their ear saying, we're the right customer for you. So that's a consideration when we're starting developing out a marketing strategy, to understand, are we going at a product level? Are we going at a sector level? Are we going to have a mix of both? And for me, I do like to have clients who have maybe 3 to 4 major revenue focuses, be it at a product or a service or sector level, and that we devise our strategy around developing more customers, more of their tier 1 customers in each of those areas. So you got to ask yourself, I'm going to have a horizontal or a vertical strategy, or have a mix? And I need to get my marketing message effectively so that I can target the right people in that sector. Now, I'm going to go on to the customer base. So Sharon, I'm just going to come back to you quickly. Is there any questions on that before I go ahead?
No, it looks like we're all good, Damien.
Excellent. So we've started to get a strategic plan together now. We've set our financials for looking at our previous years and setting out the business that we want in the future based on the financial returns in the areas that we want to concentrate on. We've looked at our market positioning strategy. Are we going to have a horizontal strategy where we focus on our offering? Are we going to have a vertical strategy where we concentrate on a specific marketing sector? And all of these decisions will lead to the marketing activities that we choose. And again, that's where I suppose we start looking at budget. And just for a kind of a rule of thumb, for anybody who's looking to stand still inside their marketplace, they should be spending anywhere approximately 3 to 5% of their turnover on marketing activities. If you want to stand still in your marketplace, just with the way the market is moving, you need to be spending about 3 to 5% of your turnover on marketing. If you want to start growing your market share, you need to start to spend 5 to 8%. That's where you start outperforming your current market. And if you want to start outgrowing that market by a substantial percentage, like growing your market by maybe 30, 40, 50%, you need to be spending anywhere up in excess of 10% of your turnover on marketing. Now, they're big figures, but that includes your marketing hires, if you've got any marketing personnel or outsourced marketing contractors, and your actual spend on the tools that you use, your website, your webinars, your videos, etc., etc. So just to give some insight between the connections between the market that you choose and the marketing spend that you should plan for in terms of scaling your business. I'm in the middle of scaling an online business at the moment. I've been working with them for this is probably just moving into our kind of midway to our second year. It started off at just under 2 million, and this year we're probably going to hit 7. So within the space of a year and a half, we've more than doubled the turnover. And we've done that by borrowing and stealing enough cash out of every source that we can find, and we've put it into brand and marketing development. We've hired 3 marketing people, one marketing manager, a marketing executive, and a junior to focus on the brand and the marketing activities. So you can see, in terms of trying to outperform the market, that's where the investment was. But we made a decision strategically, that's what we needed to do, and we put the cash flow in place to make that happen. As a beg, borrowed and stealed. But now we're aiming over the next 3 years to own about 15% of the market that we're going after. And that ultimately will turn it into a 40, maybe a 50 million euro business. So is it worth spending the money now and all those marketing activities to go after it? Damn right it is. So they're the type of the decisions that you can make if you're clear about who you're going after and that you're able to get the marketing message right. And it's well worth your while getting the experts in to help you with this if you don't have the expertise. Now, I want to move on to customers. We have a half an hour left, and I want to get through these last 3 points. When it comes to developing a plan around customer, this is the beauty of this technology. I don't run out of whiteboard. This is great. I can stay going all the time. So I've loads of space to work with. I don't know whether that's a good or bad thing, because I'm afraid to look back on all the things that I've drawn so far. But one of the things I want to move on to now is the customer. Now, when it comes to our customers, I want you to consider 2 areas. I'm trying to get a circle around that. Hang on a sec. Let's go again. No, it don't work. When I'm talking about customers, I want you to think of 2 things. I want to talk about new customer acquisition, and I want to talk about existing customer growth. New customer acquisition and existing customer growth. And you need a plan in place for both of those. However, if I was given a choice to choose only one, or if I had the ability to choose only one, I'd go after this first and this second. Because everyone that's on the call here, I guarantee you, all of you have an existing customer base. And we should always and ever consolidate and secure our existing customer base. And then you can start going after new customers when you get that right. So obviously those can run in parallel, but it means if we start with our existing customer base, when you look at existing customer growth, ECG, what does that remind you of? ECG, familiar with that? The heart, electrocardiogram. What does that monitor? It monitors heartbeat. Your existing customers are the heartbeat of your organization. Therefore, you need to make sure that you're planning effectively for them. So one of the things that I get everybody to concentrate when we look at this ECG, this existing customer growth, is I start looking at account management. Start looking at account management. Essentially, what I do is I get a printout of all of the customers that are on the books of the client, and we literally take out a white, red, or what you call it, a highlighter pen, and we go through them, and we make sure that we fully understand the revenue that's being generated by all of our existing customers. So it sounds like an owner's task, but I'm sure all of you have either Excel or you've got a package, a financial package that allows you to print off your customers and see what revenue you got from them over a period, over a given period. So let's look at 2019 as a period of time. The next thing that I do when I've got my customers identified and I've looked at the revenue sources, I start to tier them. So I look at the highest one. So here we have one at the top, and I've highlighted them in terms of going over them. And I've said, right, this customer is delivering to me maybe in excess of 100K. And he's the only customer that I have that's over 100K. Or maybe, do you know what? I've got 2 or 3 customers at 100K. And what I recommend is that when we look at our tier 1 customers, you don't have any more than 5 tier 1 customers. Now, you might think that I'm saying to you, don't have any more than 5 top paying customers, don't look for any more. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in terms of the categorization, there should always only be a maximum of 5 in that top pyramid. If there's more than 5, change this value, make it higher. Because I want you to be always striving to get more tier 1 customers, but I want it to be harder to get into that exclusive club from a revenue perspective. So set that value accordingly. 3 to 5 is a good number in there. If it's only 1, so be it. If you've only 1 customer that's turning over 100K and you reckon you should have more, then draw the line at 100K and start setting your aspirations to move your existing customers up to that value. Second tier might be 75 to 100K. The next tier could be 45 to 75. Here it could be 20 to 45. And we could always put on another tier here. Oops, let me get rid of that. This is where this is trying to fix this for me. And this could be 0 to 20. And what you've done there really is you've categorized all of your customers from a revenue perspective. So the first iteration of this, I do it from a revenue perspective. The next time I go about this, I'd look at the exact same pyramid and I do it from a profitability perspective. So I'd go, right, out of all of these customers, which ones are actually contributing at a higher profitability level? And eventually, I would call them my tier 1 customers. Then I'd have my tier 2 customers and tier 3 and tier 4 and maybe tier 5. Now, by doing that, it means I get to know my customers intimately. Now, if we want to start talking about existing customer growth, it means I can be so much more targeted in among my existing customers about which ones I want to grow. So rather than trying to say I want to grow all tier 3s to tier 2, that's not feasible. You can look at your tier 3s and go, do you know what? I've got maybe 10 in there that I think we should grow to become tier 2s. I've got tier 2s in here that I think have the capabilities of being tier 1s. And it means I get very focused on strategies to grow those individual customers. So it's again, going back to my, don't say no while you're saying yes. You know what I mean? Don't say no to your existing customers in terms of the service you provide them, but say yes to these customers who you proactively go after and grow inside your existing customer base. Now, to make that happen, what I recommend is you start profiling them a little bit more detailed. You start looking at your customers going, right, customer 1, maybe that's a tier 1 customer, and he buys product 1 and product 3 off me. So if I'm going to target growing him to become a tier 1 customer, I need to identify these products that they have a need for, that they should be buying off me. So when I'm talking exclusively to that customer, I'm not trying to sell him everything. I'm just trying to sell him or upsell him or cross-sell him the products or services that he does need that he doesn't currently buy off me. And that's, again, I just call it an account management matrix. And you do that for all your customers so that you can start identifying all the different customers in your customer base, what they're currently buying off you versus what they should be buying off you. And in a lot of cases, your existing customers need to be educated to the other products and services that you offer. That sometimes they are already buying these products or services of somebody else, but just because they don't know that you do it. So when you start looking at the customized marketing here, you're going to start targeting them with that education that this is what we do, how we do it, and how it's going to benefit them. And because you're already selling to them, it means they already trust you. And believe it or not, if you do that effectively, and if you continue this all the way down where we've created this list of maybe 200 customers, we can now start seeing, trends in terms of all these X's in certain boxes and identify marketing strategies just around those customers who have that X as a requirement. So now we can actually use this customer matrix to target the type of marketing that we send them to cross-sell and upsell to other products. And all that is about account management growth. And to do that effectively, then I'd set a target for these customers that I want to grow. Because maybe I want to consolidate some of my other customers, but I'd certainly set targets for customers that I want to grow. What do they do in 2019? What should they be doing office in 2020/2021? Then I'd assign an account manager. Either it's you or somebody inside your organization that has that relationship with them. And then I'd go out and I'd be talking to them on a regular basis to try and cross-sell and upsell on these. That's existing customer growth around account management. Now, the beauty about this is if we profile our customers correctly, it means we understand what a tier 1 customer looks like. We understand what a tier 2 customer looks like. So it means when we start looking at the other requirement here, when we start talking about new customer acquisition, then we can be very focused in saying that, do you know what? I really only want to try and win more tier 1 and tier 2 customers so that we can gear our marketing towards our tier 1 and tier 2 customers, and all of our focused efforts from a sales, because our sales efforts can be focused, because sales is time consuming. So you might as well spend your time going after tier 1 or tier 2 customers rather than trying to win any type of business. And this type of profiling internally, because this is what it is, it's profiling. It says, I want more tier 1s or more tier 2s. So when we look at new customer acquisition, and we start looking at the sales funnel behind this, it means that we now can target more tier 1s and tier 2s as part of our marketing efforts. And then we get very systematic about the process that we sell to our customers. Now, I'm often asked when I run sales programs, what's more important, the individual's ability or a systematic way of selling? And, I'd love to say there's a right or wrong answer. We always have some really good salespeople inside an organization. But what customers love is consistent selling. They love to get a consistent level of service and be sold consistently rather than ad hoc. And unfortunately, we rely heavily on individual people skills and the attitude of our employees. We don't always get consistency. So that's why I recommend that we look at having a defined sales process when it comes to winning new business. So we profile out our customers for tier 1 and tier 2, and we target our marketing activities, because marketing is happening up here. Now that's our website, Remember I said if we're going after a particular sector, be it manufacturing or be it retail or hospitality, our website would scream it, that's what we're best at, what we're passionate about. That's where our economic drivers come from. That's where our expertise are. So we market ourselves towards that customer base. We message towards that customer base. And we choose the different mediums, whether it be social media, whether it be direct marketing, whether it be webinars, whether it be video. We target those customers so that we get them into our sales process. And that sales process runs, and I'm going to give just kind of a fundamental sales process. It starts with initial contact, then goes to face-to-face meeting, then goes to quotation, and then it either goes to sale or no sale. And if we're going to systemize this out, I would make sure that every one of my salespeople know exactly which questions to ask. That they have a template, almost like a checklist, that when they're sitting with this customer, because we know what they need because we've profiled them out, but we need to make sure we're asking the right question. So when we do have that initial contact, we can really get to the heart of their requirements because we know them intimately. And we're trying to say, this is what we do, how we do it, and how we benefit others. And also at this level here, we're trying to filter the wrong customers out. So by the time we get to the face-to-face meeting, we're able to make sure that we can ask these questions and that we can prepare a quotation that's suitable to their needs. And then obviously we follow up on that quotation to get to a sale or no sale period position. So they're kind of just 4 kind of fundamental steps that should be inside every sales process that we're working towards. And my recommendation is that you systemize as much of this as possible. For your initial contact, we have scripts. For your face-to-face meetings, you literally have a checklist that you go through. For the quotations, we have standard quotations that make up maybe 60% of how that quotation is sent, with the 40% customized to that end user's requirements, and that we follow up, that we have a system for following up. And it's amazing how many people go down through this entire process and forget to follow up. That's customer. Now, I've only got 15 minutes left, Darren, so I'm going to run through the last 2 sections quite quickly, if that's okay, and then I'll take questions at the end. Normally, because I know I usually get a lot of questions around this area, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to go to the very end, and those that can stay on, I'm happy to stay on too and answer some questions. Is that okay? So, 2 things around customer that we've already mentioned there is account management and new customer growth. So we've done financials, we've done market, and we've done customer. Now, the 2 things I want to cover in efficiency and innovation. Again, it's probably one of the most demanding areas. How do we make our existing company more efficient? And how do we introduce innovation into our business? From an efficiency perspective, the strategy that I often engage is a very simple one and I'm going to do this as a people strategy rather than a technology or any other or a service strategy, because I think a lot of efficiencies can be built around how we interact with our existing staff and how we get them to work effectively. To bring efficiencies inside the organization, what I generally use is a very simple model called the RACI model. Okay, the RACI model, and when you get a chance afterwards, you can Google what the RACI model is. But a very top level summary is that if everybody in your organization knows who the doer is, who's responsible for the task, and everybody in your organization knows who the accountable is, who the owner is of the task, then it is more likely that people won't get in each other's way, and that we won't have duplication of tasks, and we won't have tasks falling between 2 stools. So even by having people designated as being the responsible and the accountable means that we should improve efficiencies inside the organization. Imagine being able to just put in those 2 steps that we look at some of our key tasks and we're able to say, you're responsible and you're the accountable. Accountable, the buck stops with that person. The responsible is the doer. Now, often they're the same person, but when we start talking about larger organizations, it means that we can start saying who's who. And probably gathering from me now, I'm a big fan of systematic ways of working. I'm a big fan of processes. And as much and all as we love or hate processes, sometimes they get a bad name because sometimes we overcomplicate them. Here's a simple Raki model that I put in place for a customer quite recently, and I've just modified it slightly, but here's a company that does modernizations. So they go into companies and see there's a modernization required. I'm not going to go into specifics, but you can get the gist. So they'll see something that's quite old inside a building and they'll say, right, that needs to be modernized, and we can put a quotation together for it. Here we've identified all of the phases to try and make sure that there's efficiencies in terms of how we deliver that business. And we've broken it down into 4 phases: the sales phase, the order processing, the project planning, and the implementation. And we've identified each of the key tasks that's required in those phases. Inquiry in, qualified in or out, that's the sales process we spoke about there earlier. And we create a reference inquiry. CRM updated, schedule a site visit, site survey completed, indicative quote to the customer, formal quotes to the customer, CRM updated, and PO request from customer. All part of the sales phase. Now, I'm not going to go through each one of them. Now, I just so you know, I will be making slides available to everybody afterwards, which will be less messier than what I'm doing now, and give you lots more information, so you can have them as backup. So I know some of you are taking notes furiously. I can see you see you on screen, but I will be providing you with some backup material on this as well. But if you look at how we've now line itemed each one of those areas, and we've put an initial in the box. We've put an initial in each one of these boxes as to who's the responsible, who's the doer, who's the owner, and you can see P is the person in that box all the way down. So they're the accountable, they're the business owner, division owner. But there's different people in the responsible box. Sometimes it's the same person, sometimes a different person. And you can see when you move into the sales phase versus the order processing phase, the project planning, we've got loads of different names. And that means we have to sit down as a team and work out who's doing who's doing what, and when. And just by having that total understanding end to end of that process, we reckon we've introduced about 20 to 30% efficiencies in terms of how they run those projects. And these are multi-million euro projects. So as much and all as we talk about, it's great at the front end to be generating sales, efficiencies inside your organization, specifically efficiencies around people's roles and responsibilities, can yield a significant result. So the RASI model is probably the simplest one I can introduce to you to bring efficiencies inside an organization. Now, while I'm on that, when we talk about people, I'm going to move on to the last bit, which is people and organization. Just going to have a look at my screen here. Yep, there's lots of messy notes in there for all of you to enjoy later on. I will try and take a screenshot of that and give it out as a graphic, and you can play around with it later. I'm not sure anyone will make sense of it after I finish talking, but I'm nearly there. The last bit that I want to talk about is people and organization. And this is where I recommend a kind of a simple methodology. I like kind of keeping things simple. But if we're going to look at the last step here, sorry, let me just do this. People and organization. So that means that we want the right people doing the right things in the right jobs. 3 criteria is there. A, the right people. B, the right people doing the right things. And that's where the Raki model really steps in. It means that we totally understand who the right people are to do a task, who the right people are to own a task, and that we have them in the right positions. So what I tend to do is, I develop what's called a functional org chart. Sorry, wait 1 second. Make this a little bit bigger. Here we go. So what I do is I look inside an organization and I look at all the key areas. So we look at sales, we look at operations, we look at finance, we look at HR, we look at legal, we look at R&D. And again, we might have multiple other boxes as part of an operation side of business. And the next thing that I do is I look at the key tasks that each one of these areas are responsible for. And I literally put those in place. And it's a very simple exercise, sitting down with individuals inside every department and go, right, how do we make that department successful? What are the key tasks that make that department successful? Be it HR, be it legal, be it R&D, whatever the case may be. And by doing that, it gives me total transparency of everything that's going on inside the organization. So now I can understand that we can't do everything to 100%. I'd like to think we could, but we don't always do everything to 100%. But what I do want to know is, I want to know what are the key tasks that make sales successful, that make our operations department successful, that make our finance successful. And when I understand those key tasks, it means that I can start making sure that I have my Raki model in place so that everybody understands that that's their key task, that's their responsibility. And what happens inside organizations, particularly SMEs, it's never just a silo-based role that people have. People might have, you know, a major role in sales, account management, new customer acquisition, but they also might, I'm missing a very key box here, let's say marketing. That's what you're talking about earlier on. They've loads of tasks inside sales because that's a major job. But you know what? They might have to do a little bit of liaising with the operations team in terms of delivery of that product. They might have to notify their finance team in terms of getting that PO ready or that invoice needs to be sent out. They might need to do a customer check on that customer in terms of are they a suitable person to take on board. And they might have an input in terms of creating content for marketing. So imagine that was one person inside the organization. It means by just defining the key tasks across the board, I can now pull out a very specific job description for that individual that captures all of the key tasks that they perform across the organization, not just silo-based, based on their job description, on their previous kind of role title, I should say. So that's a very simple way of understanding what's going on inside your business and who's doing what. And imagine you were able to sit with each staff member and kind of go, right, can I look at your key tasks? Because sometimes we have a perception that these are the key tasks, but they're not really. They say they're doing this. Oh, sorry, I didn't know that was one of my key tasks. I've been doing this as well. And we start seeing where there's inefficiencies inside the organization. I've often seen people that are duplicating on tasks and you kind of go, no, do you know what? I'm going to move you from these two tasks over to these two tasks over here. It's a better use of your time. And we have that covered. And again, this allows transparency so that you can move people throughout the organization effectively based on their skill sets and matches to the business requirements. And particularly if we start going back up to our financial targets earlier on and we're saying, do you know what? We're going to grow one of our specific areas. And we've identified that this sales target here needs to be grown. Therefore, we need to build up our team around that particular area. Now I can start looking down onto my functional org chart and make sure that I have the right number of people that are capable of doing the key tasks that are required to support that level of business. And often what you'll end up finding is, do you know what? We have nobody to do this task, nobody to do this task, nobody to do this task, nobody to do this task. And that helps you identify a development plan. And, you know, there was a question there, you know, how do I start moving my business from being lifestyle into a scaling business? Like, this is one of the fundamental exercises that you have as part of answering that question, going, I understand the areas inside my company that are key tasks, and I understand our ability to be able to provide those key tasks, and I understand the key tasks that I'm going to require in the future, and I start planning accordingly. I move people around the organization, or I outsource specific tasks that I need, or I start developing a system by which I can cross-train people to have multiple functions. So if you combine this with the RASI model, I guarantee you'll bring in anywhere between 20 to 30% efficiencies inside your business inside a 3-month period, if you do that effectively. If you do your account management to a high degree, if you tier your customers, target your customers, and you go after those customers in a systematic way, I can almost guarantee you a 20% growth in revenue figures. Minimum. Anytime I've ever put an account management function in place in an organization, I've never seen less than 20% growth in terms of existing customer growth. And it also drives the new customer acquisition in a targeted way, so we get better customers spending more money with us. So now we have account management, which is generating 20% and giving us new business. And we have efficiencies that are giving us a 20 to 30% saving. And we have an investment in marketing that makes sure that we achieve a prime position in the marketplace, all allowing us to support the ambitions that we set up for the company at the very start. Now, we've come more or less to the end of the talk, and I totally appreciate that I've thrown a huge amount of mud at everybody. And I suppose what I'm hoping is some of it sticks, that you see certain parts of it that you can immediately pick at going, you know what, this quarter I'm going to do the account management piece, because that's what makes sense for me. I'm going to look at my existing customer base, and I'm going to try and cross-sell and upsell because it makes sense. And it's hard to get new customers in the market at the moment. So do you know what? My existing customers are going to be my priority. You might be saying to yourself, do you know what? I'm happy enough with what's happening on the front end, i.e. on my customer acquisition front. I need to bring in efficiencies. So we've two really easy strategies there to bring efficiencies inside your organization. And again, if you add 20% to your top line and you take 20, 30% out of your bottom line in terms of costs or improved efficiencies, that has a significant leverage effect on your PTE ratio, on your profitability. And if we do it by focusing our efforts around the right products or services that yield the maximum results, and we do it in line with everything that we're passionate about, that we're best at, and that it makes money for us, I guarantee that at the end of all this, you will be well on the road to getting the business that you want. Sinead, Sharon, that's it.
Fantastic, well done. And it just actually struck me there where you were going through the different departments and the different areas of a business. It might not always be a person, or it might not always be a person that has to fill that gap. Sometimes there are marketing tools out there, schedulers,
Absolutely.
all that kind of thing.
Absolutely, that's 100%, I suppose. And again, I am limited to a window here. I could spend days on each one of those aspects, and like nothing gets me more excited when I start jumping into each one of those aspects and being able to drill down. Because, like I mentioned, that business we're growing hard, even despite everything that's going on in C19. And we spoke about, I'm putting 3 people in place. But we're also invested in a totally new revenue system so we can monitor everything that's going on. It gives us loads of predictive analytics in terms of who's buying what, predictive in terms of when they should be buying, so that we can gear our marketing to send them out the messages at the right time. There's so many tools out there. We developed a marketing calendar where we've automated, all of the social media, all the content is where the effort goes into. So you're absolutely right. But all of it is kind of predicated on you thinking about these things. And if you think about them in those 5 areas, you know what I mean, that you start building a plan that answers all of these questions. And I do apologize. I know it looks terribly messy when we start looking at all of the writing.
We were well able to follow you, Damien.
Yeah,
so
I'm worried about the scribbles. But if you have as I said to you, set out that plan going, I know where I'm going to change my business in terms of going after certain products. And I know what niche I'm going to go after, and develop the marketing plan to support my development of that niche area, or that expertise, or that prime area. And I invest money at the right percentage of turnover, then I'm likely to be more successful. And that if I do my account management and I grow my existing customer base and I use that to target more customers effectively, then I start doing the people and the tools piece, the efficiencies, the tools, the innovations, the technology, and make sure that people are effective in terms of supporting that.
Yeah, brilliant. Exactly. And it really does, it is a case, like, honestly, you did go through so much today. That could have been a week's worth of information, but I think everybody can walk away, and I know you're going to send out like slides afterwards that kind of captures all this anyway, but people can actually sit down themselves in an afternoon, cup of coffee, to say, right, what am I going to do there? And, to actually systematically go through all this information and how they can apply it to their business.
Exactly. And I suppose, like, I know we're recording this session for other people to go back on afterwards, and some people may be seeing this for the first time, but I've taken businesses that were barely turning over €1 million and turned them into €10 million businesses by applying these practical steps.
Yeah.
And by understanding that there is mechanics, there is levers, there's tools that you can apply that make this easy for anybody to start even taking the fundamentals of them and applying inside their business.
Right.
And you're right, in terms of content, you know, like I run these advanced courses that are 6 months in 3 months in duration, 6 months in durations, and 10 months in duration. And they all, you know, like at the end of it, this is what I'm building up with the clients on these courses. So we've got through a fair amount of stuff there in the last couple of hours.
Yes, definitely. So
Time for questions?
Yeah, I think at that, because there's been so much information now, just in case anybody needs to run at 12 o'clock, I just want to cover over really quickly. Somebody had put something in the chat there about social media and tips on how to take advantage of it. So we've got you covered, because next week's webinar is going to be all around building a powerful presence online for your business with Noel Davidson. So that's another in the series of this toolkit that we're coming to. So just in case anybody has to run off, I want to let you know, and that person who put that on the chat, definitely come along next week, because there'll be plenty of tips. Damien, really important question here. Sole trader competing with bigger companies which are longer in the market. So I suppose it feels like a bit of a Mount Everest. Due to this, there can often be confidence issues. What's your advice around that?
Yeah, and I suppose like this is kind of business at the speed of trust. You know, like it is hard sometimes to break a monopoly on when there's larger companies out there. Like to be honest, like I'm a small business owner. I often go up against huge organizations going after certain tenders. I'll say two things. First of all, perception is reality, i.e., depending on how you perceive yourself in the marketplace and how you portray yourself in the marketplace can be two different things, and that's where your marketing can really stand to you. And the second thing is, I'll go back to this bit here, is that in a lot of cases, we have a lot of people selling the same thing. The difference is often about the passion that's behind the selling. And particularly for small businesses who are hugely passionate and can offer a phenomenal services, their aim should be to try and get face-to-face with the person who's buying that product or service and show the differentiators between them and to really showcase what they can bring to the table. But I do kind of put that in an umbrella. Perception is reality. In order to get as far as that face-to-face, sole traders or smaller companies have to market better than some of the larger companies. And again, look, I've done this with companies, Sharon, where I've had, in a manufacturing area, I've had a client who was a minnow by comparison to some of the multinationals that were in that space. And we've worked ourselves up to probably the number 2 position in Ireland and a top 5 position in the UK. And we concentrated on the market perception. But we built our strategy around a handful of core product offerings. And we specialized on those core product offerings. And that allowed us eventually start cross-selling and other products and services in when we got to that expert level, if you like, or that authority level on those particular products. So what I mentioned over there in terms of the that niche, that very scribbly box that I'm now looking at, that you know that if you're small, you have to be very, very confident of your own ability, and that all your passion, all of your expertise, you need to be striving towards that prime position and doing everything you can, be it social media, be it your website, be it your blogs, be it your webinars. Get into that speaking positions where you're seen by people inside the industry, become known as that expert. And to be honest, people start, once you're able to answer how you're going to deliver the service, people will be overcome people will overcome a lot of the objectives that they would normally be looking at you just because you're small.
Yes, exactly. And I think sometimes we can have the perception that the big company must look bigger, but actually it's often down to person, human to human, and the quality you can bring. And sometimes your biggest strength is the fact that you're so invested in it, you're so passionate about it. And as you say, if you're displaying your level of knowledge through social media, blogs, and the face-to-face is more screen to screen now. But again, even coming to things like this and getting your name out there, putting the name of your company beside it. I see a couple of them there. I see Niall Keady, digitalpitch.ie. We know straight away where to find Niall, for example. Damien O'Brien, SME Matters. We know the name of the company. It's a smart thing to do, and it's a free marketing tool. And these days we're all attached to the screens. We're gathering in the one place. It's a good thing to do. But I think it comes back really to believe in yourself, believe in your ability to do something.
And
Key.
I know I probably should have nearly finished off, and I know I'm totally out of time. We've loads of questions to answer, but there's one thing I just want to do just very quickly, if I can get my screen to behave itself. That when you start, like what I've done here on the right hand side, so everything over here, I call it almost the mechanics. There's a mechanics of being in business, but this bit over here, the feelings, the belief, like when you really believe something, it gives you a huge amount of energy behind it, you know, and people sense that energy from you in terms of your interactions with them. And when you're have a huge amount of energy, it gives you loads of focus on what you're trying to achieve, and focus gives you results. And ultimately, that's where it dovetails in with strategy, that you have the combination of everything that you're bringing to the table at a personal or a business level, and the mechanics of doing a lot of the steps that I've outlined today and doing them in the right order. It ultimately ends in you getting the right results for you and the business.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that actually almost answers the next question I have, which is, as a startup, how would you approach the tier due to no existence of customers yet? It's a similar thing, isn't it?
It's a similar thing, but I'd still profile the type of customers that you want. And to be honest, you know, like if you look at the financial pie charts that I put in there, you know what I mean, the revenue now versus the revenue in the future. If you're starting with a clean slate and you're saying, well, look, I don't have any customers now, but I'm very clear about the customers that I want in the future. You can start profiling those customers. And what I recommend is when you're profiling them, give them a name, give them a nickname. You know, I have one of my customers, you know, they've got Slick Steve, they've got Budget Brenda, you know, they've got, geez, the other names, oh, okay, sorry, they're not coming to me, but they put names on their customers that they want to go after. And they almost can visualize the customer that they're talking to so that they can gear themselves to be that provider. So I just go to the future and say, right, I believe that I'm going to be a 1 million euro company, a 5 million euro company, a 10 million euro company, and I'm going to build it by providing my service to these type of customers. I profile them and then I market myself specific to them, and I do everything to get in front of them.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and it is about focus and going for it, and that's it. And then
Focus gets results.
I have one final question for you here, but it's a good one. Without much analysis, I know that most of my customers are in tier 1, 2, and they're there because they buy the highest revenue profitability services, and most of the lower tier customers are there because of the lower revenue profitability services that they buy. Does it make sense to try and cross or upsell in that case, i.e. sell lower revenue to high tier customers and vice versa? Or what is the conclusion? Or should the focus be?
I think the key thing here is that when you do the marketing matrix, and sorry, I just want to stop sharing my screen at the moment so that I can start looking at people here, because the joy of having this is, I said to you before, I've 3 screens. So I'm actually trying to make sure that I'm pulling the right graphics in the right area. But when you do the account management matrix and you profile your customers in terms of what products or services that they currently have off you, and you only sell them ones that you believe are the right ones for them. Never just cross-sell or upsell just so that you can get an extra buck. If you do that, you're breaking the trust that you have with the customer. And to be honest, like, you go back to your purpose statement, what we do, how we do it, and how we benefit others. Like, if you start just cross-selling, upselling just for the sake of making a quick buck off somebody, I guarantee you it'll come out in the wash later on. So no, I wouldn't do that. I just make sure I sell the right products and service to the customer that needs them.
Right, perfect, Damien. And one very, very quick one. This is more of an efficiency. As a sole trader, should I insert accountants and solicitors, etc., as task managers and scope out what they can do for me instead of the perhaps limited tasks they're performing right now?
Yeah, to be honest, you can't invest enough with outsourcing in that area. Now, whether you make them the outright accountable, to be honest, it's not their business. It's always going to be your business. So really, the accountable is always probably going to sit with you. But you can certainly make sure that you have a reporting structure in place, that you're getting the right information to make sure that the right things are being done. So yes, I easily have contractors or outsourced. Ours are the responsibles, but you would still have to keep the A, but I would just monitor the reporting structure to make sure that I'm getting that information.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, that's great advice, Damien. Thank you. Well, yeah, I think safe to say we're out of time. We're at about 12:15, but in fairness, I think we definitely got value today for those 2.25 hours that we spent. So thank you so much, Damien. On behalf of Leo Fingal, obviously, thanks to you. And most importantly, thanks to all of you who have shown up today. Like, I know it's a good chunk out of your day, but my goodness, there is plenty there to work on for your businesses. Take that little bit of time to sit down and go through your strategy in your own time and work through it. And above all, I think the main thing at the moment is that we all believe in ourselves and our ability to get through this, and also use the opportunities that are there, because I'm definitely seeing opportunities. Next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m, we're doing the third in the series of Restart Fingal. It is Noel Davidson, aka Mr. TOV, for those of you who have gone to the Trading Online Vouchers. But Noel has been around for a very, very long time. And I don't mean that in an offensive way. I mean that in a, my God, how much expertise this guy has. He is going to be talking about creating a powerful online presence, and just that idea of creating your persona online. And I think it ties in very nicely to everything we were talking about today. You know, how do you present yourself? How do you get into that space where you're seen as being knowledgeable, as you're seen as being the authority? And that tone and that language that you use that entices people to buy from you. So it is going to be a brilliant, brilliant session. So I hope I will see you all there next week. In the meantime, have a great end of week. And thanks again to Damien for everything.
And thanks to everybody's patience with that whiteboard, because I know it's kind of a new tool to be using for these seminars. So it is at times a little bit clunky, and I said I was apologizing for the standard of my writing, but it's when you're writing on a screen with a small little pen, it can be quite difficult. But I do appreciate everyone's patience. So hopefully you got what you need from it, and I look forward to seeing some of you again on some webinars in the future. Thank you, everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks, Damien. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.